This is the quick and dirty demonstration. Dirty because, like, literally look at my craft area. This is the quick and dirty demonstration of how I make a somewhat simple ornament, the time involved, the labor involved, and just the techniques. Here I have rice paper. I purchased this. I did not create it myself, although sometimes I do create them. So this is a rice paper design I'm going to put on the ornament. I'm putting it onto a round surface, so I have to tear it so that when it lays down it doesn't like get these crazy wrinkles, although it's not always wrinkle proof. Brushing the Mod Podge on, you put a layer on under the ornament, under the rice paper, then you put the rice paper on top, and then you smooth it down with more, actually it's not Mod Podge. I discovered Polyvine, which is like 100% better in the sense of how it holds up and how smooth it is, and also the lack of bubbles. A lot of times with other mediums I've used for decoupage, they end up showing air bubbles when they dry. So I prefer the Polyvine. It's more expensive, but it lasts a long time and it's awesome. So now it's time for it to dry, and then it'll be on to the next. I'm making a set of 4. Hopefully they sell. So now I've got a layer of green on the bottom half underneath the cardinals, which are setting on branches. And I'm doing, what color did I choose? I can't remember, but I'm going to add pictures so you guys can see. It's like a creamy color on the upper half. Now, this is kind of time consuming because I don't want to cover up the birds. So I have to get all the way to the border of the bird, but not on the bird. I use the wet wipes to wipe off any mistakes I make. And when you use the decoupage medium, which for me was Polyvine, on top of the rice paper before you paint, it's a lot easier to wipe off your mistakes. If you try to wipe off paint from a straight up rice paper with no Mod Podge on top, it just absorbs right into it. So it's not coming off. So again, just finishing up the painting, and I'm going to end up deciding I don't like the flat look because the rice paper borders can be a little raised. So a lot of times I will add texture if I don't like how it turns out with the first coat of paint, and I will end up doing that when I look at this. It takes a long time. I've got this sped up like quite a bit. And the Walmart brushes I use, I just get the cheapest brushes they have. It's like a multi-pack for $5 or $6, and they do a great job. All right. Time to clean up a bit, although not too much because I am the messy crafter. All right, now putting a coat of Polyvine on top. This is the dead flat finish. I'm going to later top it with gloss, but the first coat I like to be the dead flat finish. Sometimes I'll leave it like that, but it's not as durable, so I usually do coat it with the gloss finish. This is a different ornament, but in the same family, if that makes sense. And I've decided I want it to look more rustic. So once I get this completely coated and dried, I'm going to go in with some antique wax to give it a more rustic, older, vintage look. Y'all, I go through this antique wax like nobody's business, and I don't spend a lot of money on it. Again, Walmart is a great place to get these materials. I think this antique wax is like $6 or $7 for this big old jar of it. And the longer you let it set before you wipe, the more it'll absorb into the finish. The harder you wipe, the more you will take off. So sometimes what I'll do is I'll put it on there, let it set, wipe it off, and then if I want to add more, I'll add more. And then I discovered also that if I blow dry it a little bit with on a cool setting, and then wipe it off, more of it sticks. the tips and tricks of using antique wax. So it's dried. I'm going in and covering it with more polyvine. This is the dead flat. And the biggest thing to pay attention to when you're using the finish is to make sure that there are no bubbles. My polyvine does amazing, not mine, and I didn't create it, but I use it, so it's mine. It does do amazing, but if the brush becomes overly saturated, you will start to see air bubbles. So every now and then you might see me push the brush down onto the wax or parchment paper to try to get some of it off. But not too much because I don't want to waste it. Now it's time to work on the topper. I mean, remember, these are just cheap plastic ornaments. You take something cheap, clear, and you can turn it into a beautiful thing if you want to invest a little bit of time into it. And I guess a little bit of money for the supplies. But like this gold leaf that I'm using was $10 and it will last literally probably forever. You do not need much of it to do what I'm doing with this. And look at that. It doesn't look like the cheap gold toppers that come with these ornaments. It looks classy. And I know no one's ever accused me of being classy, but I do like a classy ornament. So therefore, it's going to look classy. I've used some tight bond because when I put the top, I cannot stand it when toppers come off of the ornaments. That happens all the time with the ones I've bought in the store. So I like to glue the ornament down so that that doesn't happen. And even though if this falls, it's not going to break, it still needs to be secured. And when I did glue the topper in place, I did decide ahead of time, okay, what angle do I want hanging from the tree? What part of the bulb do I want people to see? And then you put the topper on accordingly so that it hangs straight out the way you want it to. Here's me making a ribbon. I have not done ribbon since last Christmas, and like the technique is lacking. I have forgotten how. The muscle memory is gone, but give me a couple of weeks and the muscle memory will be back. Like a dummy, I tried to hot glue the two pieces together. That did not work because they popped off easily. So then I remembered, oh yeah, I got to tie the two ends in a knot and then put it on. And it took me a long time to decide what I wanted to use for the bow. And I settled on this like burlappy gold wired bow. Working with wired ribbon is much better for making bows because they hold the shape. I've got a little wire ribbon tie. It's a big old roll of it that I just cut off a little bit, tie it in the middle, and then I fluff out the bow. On this one, I had an extra piece of bow, an extra loop, so I just decided to pull it down and have one down in the middle. Now I'm using hot gun glue to stick it to the ribbon that is actually the ornament hanger. I'm making another one for the back because I don't like my ornaments looking lopsided. So I just make a big loop and then tie it in the middle and then floof out the ribbon loops. I was struggling on this one, guys. I'm not going to lie. A lot of this is muscle memory, and my muscle memory disappeared over the summer. Used a wire cutter to trim the excess wire pieces from tying it, floofing it out. Had a piece hanging down, turned it into an extra loop in the middle to match the other side. And now I'm going to hot glue it onto the back of the ribbon. And I'll press on both sides to make sure they're stuck good. And this will stay. Unless someone rips it off, it will stay. This burlap stuff is super adhesive. So Lily comes in about this time and I ask for her opinion. And as usual, she's going to give it. That's just me putting on the antique bells I made. These started off silver. I turned them into gold with a little antiquing wax on them. And I put a cluster of 3 in the middle of each bow. So she comes in anyway. I'm like, what do you think? She always has something to say. Usually something I could do better, which is good because that's how I improve. But she's like, Mom, it looks top heavy like your bun. I was like, okay. She's like, just take an extra piece of ribbon and like have a couple of bow tails hanging down. I was like, okay, that's an easy fix. So I did that, fold the ends and cut in a slanted vertical line. That gives them a little finish on the end. I'm using since it is burlap, it will unravel. I'm using a hot glue gun to just gently coat the edges so that they don't unravel on me and look like garbage. And then I'm just going to fold the tops of it a little bit to create a more tapered look. Hot glue that shut. And then I'm going to glue them inside of the loop that hangs down. So they're going to look just like, a ribbon tail. The first one done, getting the second one done. And of course, I don't like my ornaments lopsided, so I've got to do the same thing to the back. There is no ugly side to any of my ornaments. They all sides look pretty. I mean, in my humble opinion, of course. So now, you can't really see it that well, so I'm about to jump to where it's hanging up on my drying tree. Got to do the back. Same thing, little hot glue on the edge of the ribbon so it doesn't unravel, which you could do this with any ribbon you're using that might unravel. Fold the top edges, glue them, and then shove them inside that loop and glue. And this comes out really nice, guys. I don't know why it took me so long. I kept looking at ribbon for the last 2 days. I could not decide what ribbon I wanted to use. I started off with twine. That looked like hot garbage. So then I was like, let me look through my ribbons again. And I saw this burlappy gold. I was like, oh my God, this is perfect because it's fancy, but it's also like rustic looking. And of course it's wired ribbon, so you can bend those tails down anywhere you want them. But that's it.